You're very welcome back. Now, the prospect of a full-blown trade war between the EU and the US was averted for the second time in less than 12 months following President Donald Trump's dramatic U-turn on Greenland. But despite this, the world is still in a pretty fraught place geopolitically.
Joining us now to discuss current relations with the US, as well as what's happening in Leinster House, is Tánaiste and Minister for Finance, Simon Harris. Simon, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. First of all, I want to talk by asking about last year when you and your family were subject to kidnapping threats of sexual violence, death threats. What sort of impact did that have on you? Because you're a father, you're a husband, you've got 2 kids.
It had a very real impact, to be very honest, and it all happened at the weird thing about politics is there's certain things you just have to turn up to. So this all happened just a couple of days before what they call the think-in, so where my parliamentary party was due to meet. And literally in the kind of 24, 48 hours before that, we'd been subject to exactly as you say, threats on our home, threats against my family, threats to kidnap my children. And it was the first time in public life that I'd actually genuinely found it hard to turn up. And it had more of an impact on me than I could have ever imagined, because it was at a different level. It was coming for my family, and it just seemed to be relentless. And I didn't know what to do, being very honest. We all get, so this is not about somebody making a kind of comment or a criticism online, or I'm well used to that, I've got a thick skin. This was at a level I'd never seen before, I'd never experienced before, and I genuinely didn't know what to do. And at the end of the day, your primary responsibility, all of us, no matter what job we have, your primary responsibility is to your family, is to your kids, is to their safety. And I took a decision because generally, and this happens across the political spectrum, but generally we kind of just suck it up, you just stay quiet, move on.
Yeah.
And I just took a decision to speak out on it because quite frankly, I didn't know what else to do. And I thought in doing that, it might help actually bring a spotlight to it. But it was a really difficult period.
Because I know you talked about considering resigning on it. Like, your children are very public. You post them on social media. Whenever some things like that happen, like, what does your wife feel about you posting your kids on social media, particularly around the whole government video that went out there, telling people to be aware what you're putting up online. We're seeing what grok with the sexualized images going out as well. Is it something that you've had a conversation with you and your wife about? Should we be putting our kids out on, because they're 7 and 4, you can't really ask them for consent at that age.
No, definitely. And actually, we've been, not just my family, but I'd say lots of families have been talking about this and considering this, and certainly I'm changing my own approach to that. Having said that, I mean, everybody has a right to be safe. And everybody has a right to not have their home and their family violated and their children threatened. So while there's always steps we should all take, and not all of this was online, some of this was phoned into Garda stations and the likes, but the level of the sinister nature behind some of what happened, some of which I won't even discuss, was at a level.
But has it made you, because I have kids very similar ages, and my wife has told me no more pictures online of the kids.
It has made me much more conscious of that and of their face and not exposing their face. And I think that is a really important. And I think it's kind of sad on one level because we're all human in one way, and we all want to, we all like to post significant moments in our lives, whether you're a public figure or not. But definitely, it's made me much more vigilant in relation to that, as I think it has made us all. And I think the grok situation in particular. I mean, it's just been discussed.
But what do we do? Because at the moment, we've got these tech companies that running around like nation states. There's no laws, there's no rules. We don't seem to be able to impose anything on them. And yes, it's awful, these bad faith actors that will use technology in this way. But there are certain people out there, like talking to some blind people who have said, AI has changed my life. It is amazing. But then you've got the heads of these companies who profit is all that matters, and they're not answerable to you or to Micheál Martin or to Ursula von der Leyen. They're just running roughshod. So
a couple of things on that. Firstly, I'm really glad you made that point about AI, because I just not long back from California, and AI has the ability to transform people's lives for the better. Because, there's ups and downs, but it's a technological revolution that hopefully will bring lots of good in terms of access to public services, assisting people. All of that is true. But equally what is true is we have to take a much tougher line when that technology is abused. And I don't accept that they're not answerable. I mean, the era of self-regulation is now over. There are now laws, there are now fines that can be levied. The European Commission this week has now opened an investigation into Grok. We need to actually see kind of a bit of bearing of teeth here. There are actually laws and they can't be above the law. This can't be the wild West anymore. I think we're going to have to go further in this country, though. We have a digital age of consent.
Yeah.
That's 16.
Yeah.
We have to start actually enforcing that. And there's good work being done on that. We're going to start by March asking social media companies, and some of them are up for this, by the way, to take part in kind of the rollout of age verification. But quite frankly, I believe we need to get to a point where if you're under the age of 16, you can't be on social media.
You're talking about being answerable to tech companies. The president of the US, Donald Trump, you've called him vulgar, bombastic in some of the comments that have come out of you about what he's threatened over the last while. As Tánaiste being quite outspoken on Donald Trump put the Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, in a difficult position, given he will hopefully have to go and see him and sit in the room with him on St. Patrick's Day, which 47% of the public said that they don't think he should go, according to a Daily Mail poll yesterday.
Yeah. So firstly, he should go, right? It's easy. It's always easy to turn up when everybody's getting along great. It's much harder to turn up when there's significant points of disagreement, but it actually becomes more important then. There's hundreds of thousands of people who watch this programme, many of whom are working in US companies today. It's about 800 Irish companies working in the US. Our relationship is much bigger than any one politician. But it is a balance, and I get the point you're making, and I'm conscious of it, but it is a balance. We have to be true to our values as well. Like, we do have to actually stand for something too. And if somebody decides they're going to set up a board of peace that involves Vladimir Putin and asks every country to pay $1 billion, I'm not going to just sit silently by when my bosses, the people of Ireland, really are quite disgusted by that prospect. And when we heard people like Mary Robinson, I think, capture that so well in recent days. So this is a balance, working with the US, respecting that it's a valuable relationship, but also understanding that this is a democracy too, that we're part of the European Union, that we stand for stuff as well. And it is always trying to get that balance right, being honest.
But when it comes to the valuable relationship, because in this country we said we're not going to put all our eggs in one basket again. We did that with housing, and we saw what happened in 2008, and now it feels like we're doing it again with US multinational and tech companies, because the Irish Fiscal Advisory Councils have said about 3/4 of a corporation tax, it's paid by these large US multinationals. We'd actually be in budget deficit if it wasn't for these US companies. So this makes us incredibly vulnerable to the whims of what's happening in Washington, D.C. So do people have to be prepared? You're the Minister for Finance now to go, right, I need to rein in spending because these corporation taxes could be gone.
So no, I think there's a couple of things. When you speak to these companies, and I met a lot of them in the last couple of weeks, when they strip away the political noise, and there's a lot of political noise at the moment, they know that they need a presence in Europe, and they know that Ireland is a good place in which to do business. Many of them have decade-long relationships, and they're very committed to this country. They reaffirmed that to me as recently as last week. But what we do need to do, and what I need to do as a Minister for Finance, is make sure we're not as reliant on what's called windfall tax for day-to-day spending. So what we're trying to do is use the windfall tax, the money that mightn't be there forever, not on day-to-day spending, but on capital, on building more roads and building more public transport and building more schools. I think that's a good thing. So, I mean, relative to the problems that other finance ministers have across the European Union, you'd rather have the set of challenges that we have here, which is a significant...
But it's about spending it right.
Yes.
And that's the big question that so many people message us in about every day, whether it be steps being built and who's signing off on this work that's being done. Even if you look at our own budget, the amount of money that we're spending. So on education last year is 13 billion spent. Plus, on top of that, then almost over half a billion was spent. So there was 4.1 billion euro unbudgeted spending. So that just shows that we have the money and we're not sticking to our budgets. We're just...
But it also shows, and look, as a Minister of Finance, I'm always saying to colleagues, we've got to stick to budgets. But it also shows we have to respond to things as they arise. So, for example, when we go out and try and engage with how many parents of a child with a special needs will need a special needs class this year, and that number can be higher than was expected, we do have to respond in real time. And we'll never regret spending extra money.
We had a parent text in the other day saying, talking about the cold weather, that their school can't turn on the heating in there. But we're still spending 13.5 billion euro, and schools can't even afford to put the heating on. There's something not right there. The money doesn't seem to be going to where it's meant to go.
I think you can pick good examples, and of course you can pick areas of challenge. But I mean, we've also managed to reduce our pupil-teacher ratio. We've managed to build so many new schools. We'll have the Minister for Education today announce a major school building project as well. We're opening more special needs classes. We have more teachers than ever before. Our education system is objectively one of the best in the European Union. I take your broader point, though. I actually don't think the challenge of these 5 years, touch wood, subject to continuing to run the economy well, is going to necessarily be about the level of spending. It's going to be about making sure the spending gets to where it needs to. And one of the things that's driving people in this country nuts is the level of bureaucracy and red tape. You announce something today and you're still talking about it in 5 years, 10 years. We have to cut
Look
out.
at Enniscorthy. 10 years we've had the funding is there, and they can't get the planning permission.
So let me tell the people of Enniscorthy, but also the people of Ireland, what we need to do there. And we had announced this before any flood, and my heart goes out to the people of Enniscorthy and indeed my own county of Wicklow. We need to pass a bill this year called a critical infrastructure bill that needs to say there's certain things in this country that matter so much that they can't just be treated as part of the regular planning process. Now, that can't be everything, but it has to be things like flood relief. It has to be water, wastewater, energy. We now have the money in this country.
We
have
need
to make sure
but when are we going to?
This year.
Like when? Like why not now? Like this government got in a long time ago, and they've been called by a lot of people, the government are getting nothing done. And a lot of stuff's going on behind the scene, but we need to start seeing this legislation coming again.
I agree, but I need, because I hear the comments the opposition make, and I need an extended slot
but
to this.
It's business people, it's people, not just opposition. It's
like if you look objectively at a lot of the things the government has gotten done over the last period of time, rollout of the National Broadband Plan, the most rural parts of Ireland that can now access broadband, the delivery of major school projects, hospital projects, more people in work than ever before, 100 jobs every single working day being created, an ability in this country to have a conversation about what can we spend more money on, how can we do more things to help carers and the likes, whereas other countries are having to say, how do we cut spending because our economy is in a bad place. But there's always more to do in politics, 100%.
There is, and it's really interesting. Listen, we've got issues in childcare. We've got people who can't get their children into the correct classes. They can't even get them to be assessed. There are so many issues here, but it just feels like we've got all this money and we don't know how to spend it right. Like, obviously, there's one thing that's really worrying people at the moment as well, and that's what's going on our streets. We've got an extra 720,000 people since 2011 living in this country, and if you take one example, community Gardaí, their numbers have decreased from 1,192. They've dropped 400. We've got 400 less community Gardaí. A lot of people point to the fact that back in 2012, an awful lot of the payments were taken away and some of the things, the pension benefits that Gardaí would have. And people are wondering what's going on. They're worried about their safety, about what's going on. Where's the money so that people can feel safe in the country?
Yeah, and yet we saw, and I think that's an important point, and the point about population is also really important because the population has massively risen and we have to make sure public services rise to meet that too, and the Guards is a good example. But we have now seen last year, for example, Templemore at record levels. I mean, the Garda College, in fairness to everyone, was closed twice during the global pandemic, right? That caused a real disruption. We are now seeing more Gardaí coming through Templemore than we have in any recent time. But we also have to make being a Guard more attractive. I mean, when you're a Guard today, the challenges you're facing on the streets are very different.
Absolutely.
You know, people sticking things up in your face, videoing you. So putting body cams on the Guards, keeping our Gardaí safe. Tasers, because I do believe Gardaí need tasers, and the Garda Commissioner has made that decision as well. So we've got to make sure, I think the level of abuse that the Gardaí receive on the streets sometimes, people in this country are very decent, but from a small element of people is at a level that we hadn't seen in the past. So making sure that the Gardaí is not just about salaries, but making sure it's a more attractive job as well as important.
And you see that abuse, I'm sure you get it at times as well. What do you do to switch off? Do you watch The Traitors? Do you just watch Bluey with the kids?
We're on Paw Patrol in our house.
Oh really? Paw Patrol. Okay.
Quite a bit. Paw Patrol is his favourite.
Have you a favourite one?
No.
Rubble.
I know Rubble.
Rubble. There you go.
I don't know. Just like everybody, just trying to get a bit of downtime, bit of fresh air when we can.
Listen.
Rugby tots on a Saturday.
Oh, good on you.
Look, you know your audience there with that one.
Listen, Tánaiste Minister for Finance, Simon Harris, thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it.